Okay. Let me share my, give me 1 second. Okay.
Oh, Dr.Sun, we're gonna first start with my side.
请来静静，开始了。
So 1 second. I'll also open my camera. Okay.
Okay, Gary, you can start.
Okay, welcome everyone. I know people are still coming in, but welcome to the International Physical Science Forum this year, organized by our forum founder, Michael G. First of all, I want to thank all of you for taking an hour of your time today to be here to listen to the stories of some truly exceptional people in the field of science, and as well as their contributions of each of their respective fields to the modern world today. And I welcome also our VIP speakers, Dr.Sun from CalPoly Pomona, Zheng from Washington University at St. Louis, and lastly, Dr.Ng from Oaks Christian School. And speaking with them also today are other presenters alongside them who are currently a part of the forum's board members, Tommy Lin, James, Zhou, Jason, Zhao, Roger, Ruan, Tiger, Zhang, and David Gao. And lastly, one more quick note of appreciation before we begin. Special thanks to our co-chair, Mr. Wed, Mrs. Bergman, and Mr. Morrow. And Michael, you have the floor.
First, I am super glad everyone can be here at International Physical Science Forum today. Your support is crucial to our community's flourishment. Nowadays, we live in a chaotic world. The lasting impact of COVID-19 pandemic is still devastating around the world. The war in Eastern Europe has deprived millions of people of their living place. The crippling droughts and heating alarm us to pay attention in the excessive pollution human has caused in the past few decades. In face of all those crises and challenges, I believe our fellow students should feel the responsibility to work together to address the problem. The most effective way in solving those problems is by creating new technologies that can reduce pollution and competition of existing resources. Taking advantage of our academic interests in STEM, the idea of creating a physical science forum comes into my mind. In the forum, there would be brilliant speakers talking about how science and technologies impact our lives. I hope that such a forum can inform us the refreshing knowledge about science and technologies that may inspire you to have some new ideas and further your interest.
Okay, we will thank you, Michael, first of all, and we will open today's presentation with Dr. Sun, who will be sharing about his career in relation to modern AI technology and development, as well as computer science. Welcome.
All right, thanks, Gary. Thanks, Michael, for the invitation. Okay, can you all see, hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me, so Michael, Gary, I'm gonna share my screen to see if it works. But if getting very slow, please let me know. I do apologize. I'm actually out of town, so see, I'm actually in a campground, so it's not a very good place to do the conference call like this, but I will try my best. Okay, let me share my screen first. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay, all right. So if for whatever reason I got cut off or the things got laggy, please let me know. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for having me. My name is Yusa. I'm a faculty of computer science at CalPoly Pomona. So I joined CalPoly Pomona as a professor of computer science since 2014. And then before that, I was working as a software engineer in Amazon and also did a couple of other startup companies. So I'm very into technology, particularly programming, computer science. However, when Michael told me about this great event, I'm personally very, very interested because when I was middle school, high school student like you guys, I was also very, very interested in physics. I like the way of thinking in physics. I like to work on different kind of problems. It really trains you how you actually think about things in an abstract way. It actually allows you to apply all the mathematics things you learn into practice. So I think it's a very, very good subject. So I did most of my high school and middle school study in China. So I was actually part of also the physics Olympic team in my school. I didn't do very well, but I was I think I was doing a lot better than most of students that was selected in the team. But I didn't do too well in the Olympics. But anyway, I'm very interested in physics. So what I want to share today, very briefly, I'm not going to take too much of your time, is that even I've been working on computer science, but I just want you to know that physics has been making a large or maybe an increasing amount of impact on computer science. I'm very interested in all the new things going on every day in the tech field. Okay, a lot of these things, when you look at it, it looks like it's more computer science related. It looks like more like a programming, coding related. However, if you really see that from fundamental way, I would say a lot of the important things in series are supported by physics. So that's why I just want to encourage everyone, if you're very passionate about physics, I know Michael very well, I know he's very passionate about physics. I think that's a very good subject. And you guys should actually follow your passion and try to make some contributions. Okay, so I just want to share some of the examples and thoughts here. Okay, so for example, I talk about some of the trending topics and fields in computer science. Let's start with mobile computing. Okay, now we're at the year of 2022. I don't think mobile is isn't anything new, right? So everyone already familiar with this. So because of that, we've been using iPhones, a different phone, we've been using apps. But then if you look at the phone from the fundamental point of view, okay, especially the way to manufacture the hardware, whether it's sensors, it's chips, or any other the touch screen, all of those. If you look at that from the fundamental view, it's all supported by the physics series. I just take this very simple example here as a reference. So every phone we have this sensor called accelerometer. Not sure if you heard about this one, but it's a very simple sensor that allows you to test acceleration across different axes, X, Y, and Z. Think about whenever you play some games that use a phone to control a car, for example, that's when accelerator sensors. Or other example would be like sometimes the phone can actually detect your steps, how many steps you walk, the exercises. And a lot of those signals were also get from the accelerator sensors. But if you look at the fundamentals about accelerator sensor, it's all supported by Siri. You do need to understand what is acceleration. You need to understand how to build all the physical measurement to capture the data that can be used on the phone. So accelerator sensor is just one small piece of sensor used by all the smartphones. But then again, if you look at the chips, people talk about that every day. Look at other sensors, it just people can't do any of this without a very strong physics series or foundation. Okay, so that's about a mobile smartphone. So keep going. You all probably have heard about cloud computing, right? So not sure how you understand about cloud, right? So you probably heard about, oh, I put this one in the cloud. I'm going to use cloud to store my photos, all of those. However, when we talk about cloud, the most important technology you should know is that we need to have huge data centers to support and run all this cloud computing software. The data center basically is a big room or a big warehouse that has a lot of servers. Okay, I don't know if you've ever seen those, but think about like every day in the US, you're probably using a lot of Google Drive, and then that takes a huge amount of hard drives, a lot of computers. So Google has some of the very big data centers all over the country, and then it's basically you go there is all the computers. All right. So when we talk about computer, one example I can give you that is closely related with physics is how do you measure and manage the heat generated from the computer. I'm sure a lot of you have done, assembly your own personal computer with a very expensive graphics card, and you guys will know how important it is to handle the heat, the fans, right? So the cooling system. So same thing for cloud computing in the professional world. Now, this is one example. It's a very new innovation Microsoft is trying. So Microsoft, in order to solve the heating problem, the cooling problem, they actually put their data center, all the servers into the and there's the ocean. All right, so they did the test for a couple of years. Recently, there's some news that they already took out the data center out of water, even though it looks very dirty, but everything works very good. But however, think about building this whole cooling system using the ocean and water. Everything is based on theories about physics. All right, so but that's only one thing about the whole data center. Okay, to build a whole other things about energy, about think about all the wiring, the transmission, the data handling. Physics is everywhere. All right, that's about cloud computing. Other topics, let's talk about cybersecurity. Every company, every government, every country talking about security, privacy, obviously very, very important. Okay, how does cybersecurity relate with physics? Well, I'll give you one very trending example. A lot of researchers have been doing things on using the brainwave to authenticate. For example, right now we use password authenticator. We found that password is not secure because people can password. Or we start using the phone, the text messages, but I can still steal your phone and text message, then log in and for you. Some of the new approaches, this is actually very cool. They actually try to use the brain waves. So basically, if you try to log in, you simply need to think about something in your head, and then we will have this brainwave sensor to detect that wave, so that we can, verify that's the wave generated by your brain by you thinking about that specific thing. All right, so that's actually a very popular way to do that because pretty much cannot duplicate it.
Sorry, it looks like Dr.Sun will cut off.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Let me restart. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm gonna continue here. Okay, I think I was on the brainwaves. The internet here is pretty bad. But anyway, to build that sensor, capture the brainwave, you obviously need quite a lot of knowledge about the physics. All right. Another very cool part in computer science is called Internet of Things. Okay, not sure if you guys heard about it, but it's basically talking about we're going to make all the physical things connect to the internet so that we can collect data, we can do all the smart things. So the typical examples of Internet of Things would be the smart, for example, smart home. Okay, you control the AC, you control the refrigerator, you control pretty much everything you can think about, right? So that thing also changes a lot of the traditional objects and devices. Okay, all this traditional physical stuff. Okay, here I just picked some of the research examples that about the pumping system. It was all physical, but right now by combining with computer science, it's changing the way how it works. We can do more optimization. We can do some of them more control that's we can't really implement before because now we got the data, we can apply AI and machine learning, improve all the efficiency and other properties. But as you do this, as you combine the physical things with the internet, you do need to understand how the physical things work first. Otherwise, there's nothing you can do about applying those algorithms about the software. You guys probably also very familiar with VR. I guess you know this one. If you ever try this, I'm sure you probably try this when you play a VR game, which is very cool. How is VR related with physics? Well, to make a VR application, the most important thing is the software side. The glass, the headset actually is pretty simple to make these days. It's also very cheap, but it's all about the actual software running. Most of the time we put the VR, try to simulate some kind of environment. Put you to, for example, into a, I don't know, what kind of a game you play, in the sky or in some kind of a, zombie walk or whatever. So if you want to have the real experience, the simulation engine for your VR application must be really good. So when you try to do all the simulation, it's a more of a game development. So when you do those game development, even though you're writing the software, but you do need to know how the physics works. For example, if you're going to drop this, sword on the floor, how fast that should be dropping, and then how that's going to be bounced back. So you got to know the physics stuff first, so that you can program in a very real way. If your physics is wrong, then your simulation won't work very well. Your VR won't give you a very good experience. All right. And then speaking of AI, everyone is using about AI. AI has a lot of good connection with physics. And then I'm not going to show you all the different work going on right now, but to summarize, one major direction you guys should look into is that, in the traditional way, when we talk about software, program, and computer, we did a lot of the simulation. Okay, we try to use the software to simulate how this water, the wave is going to hit the beach and cause kind of effects. But now with AI, we can do a lot of prediction. So maybe there's something about the physics we don't know yet, but we can try to use AI, try to predict what's going to happen, and that might give us some kind of good insights about how physics works. So, however, to do the AI is really not, there's no like magic. You need to have a lot of the fundamental physics series laid out first, so that the AI can pick it up, can try to learn and train, and to give you better results. Okay. Other examples, if you look at some of the trending technologies, self-driving, that's one of them, right? A lot of software involved, but also when we talk about self-driving, one of the commonly used thing is this LiDAR. Basically like a laser sensor that put on top of the car. A lot of companies are using that, and then they send out all the signals. I don't know what they're sending. I don't know if it's a laser or whatever, but they're trying to capture the surrounding environment in a very data to implement that whole LiDAR sensor. I think it's all about physics. Okay, what kind of signals you use, what is the frequency, how the sensor works. So again, I don't know too much about it, but I know you do need to know the physics very well. All right. Lastly, quantum computing, that's also very, very popular. I'll be very honest with you guys. I don't know how this thing works. Okay, this is already beyond my knowledge, but I'm sure a lot of you probably know more about the quantum computing. If you're interested, take a look at those. This thing is already happening. It's basic fundamental. You change how the computer works. If this one will take off eventually, it's going to replace all the current chips. A lot of the fundamental computer architecture, the computer will be quite different. There are already some kind of machines being built based on this theory, even though it's still in a very early stage, but it's definitely very promising. However, this is all about physics. Okay, without physics, there's nothing we can do about it. All right. So anyway, guys, so this is just some thoughts I have. I'm a computer guy, but I want you to know that all the technology going on right now is very, very closely related with physics. I'm very glad you guys are in this forum, this conference. And if you have passion on this one, definitely, look into more and, get more ideas, do more research. So there are definitely a lot of good potential for you to actually make some impact for the next generation of technology. All right. So anyway, guys, thanks again for having me. I'm so glad to be able to talk and share some of the thoughts. Let me know if you have questions.
Okay, if anyone has any questions, please type it in the chat, and we will try our best to answer all of them.
Oh yeah, I just saw the comment from recyclement labs. Yeah. So the data center is definitely not a very good place to work. Okay, so it's loud, it's very hot. Well, it won't be too hot, but the AC, it depends on how well the AC is. So that's kind of the problem they're trying to solve. So they put the data center under the water in the ocean. Very cool idea. Yeah, so it's a good question. So you know, so basic question is why do we use a centralized data center instead of, you know, making everyone's computer to contribute everyone computer power, make a cloud. Okay, so that's actually a very good idea, and then that idea has been implemented. So there are different terms. Okay, so there's one term called crowdsourcing. There's some kind of a term called a collaborative computing. And then a few years ago, we also did a work, something called a gray computing. Gray is the color gray. So anyway, they're talking about the same things that there are already software that if you install, if you are willing to contribute your computing power to it, and then they will be sending the task to your computer, and then you will take it and then run it and send the results back. So you know, utilize all everyone's free CPU and to accomplish certain tasks. So that one is happening. There are even people thinking about using your CPU to do the, you know, the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency mining. Okay, so there are actually also some security issues. However, I think one reason that we still need a centralized data center is we need something more reliable. Okay, so the personal one is just a problem for, you know, a guarantee. So a lot of the time when you run the professional server program, you need to make sure that you got this amount of resources, the CPU, time, memory, all of this. You can't afford having those things in the personal computer. But also, I think there's some kind of a concern about the data privacy. Okay, you are going to store your company's database into someone else's computer. That also doesn't sound very safe. So, but this is a great idea. Okay, there are already some research work being done in this kind of way. Yeah, Jason, that's a great question. So, so AI helping design, again, that's already happening. Okay, so some of the good example, you can Google something that the AI can generate images. So that's very cool. If you Google like a, you know, text to image, there one project done by Google. Now, if you look at the image they generated, totally generated by computer, you can't really tell the difference. You can't tell that's a fake image. There are a lot of work done to generate, for example, the profile pictures, right? So if you want to show some like fake users' faces, there are AI programs to do that. You don't need to worry about the privacy because it's not a real person. AI can help the design. I'm more talking about the things I'm familiar with on the software side, right? So the AI can help the design the UI, so like a layout of the website or app, so they can tell you what to change, how to make it more popular, more reasonable. And also AI can actually help you to code. There are some also good work done by Google that they can actually take some of the challenging questions to solve it by itself. So yeah, you know, helping the design using AI is already happening. And yeah, the quantum computing, I think, again, it's still very early stage. Okay, we won't call it efficient yet. So, but again, I don't know too much in that field, but it's very early stage. It can't really do the computation that we do today, especially we use AI. We do a lot of like neural network. That's very computing intensive kind of programs. But I think very soon we will be able to see something, you know, some kind of breakthrough in that field. Yeah, exactly. So the tools like Fusion and some other tools, they already have this feature, right? So they take whatever you have, like even PowerPoint, the PowerPoint, they have things that you can automate certain layout and coloring, styling for you, right? So that's all kind of a very good example of AI. Yeah. Your question, Jim.
All right, if we have no further questions, let's move on. Thank you so much, Dr. Sun, again, for taking your time for being here today. And that was quite inspirational. And that was a great, very interesting contribution for the field of physics. And next we have our board members speaking, starting with Tommy Lin, who will be sharing. Will be sharing to us about some of the benefits of facial recognition on modern society. Welcome.
Hi guys, can you guys all hear me? All right, I see a few heads nodding, so I'm going to assume so. Apologize if my video or audio gets a little wonky. I am in a hotel room right now, so the Wi-Fi here is not the best. All right, so let's see. Hold on 1 second. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to be talking a little bit about myself first. I just graduated from Oaks Christian High School last year, and right now I am a freshman at Carnegie Mellon University. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. And I am a finance major, in Canada's CS minor. And so over the course of high school, I was really interested in the physical science and everything, right? I took 2 years of physics, 1 year of chemistry, and I was participating in Cyber Patriot, which is a computer science, basically computer system hardening tournament for all 4 years of my high school. For the record, if you guys are interested, you should look more into it. I believe the club or the team is still active on our high school campus. So if you guys are ever interested in competing, look into that. All right. So I've been invited by Michael to talk some more about just the projects I've done over the years, their impact, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And I chose my engineering capstone project for my senior year because I think this is just more the most applicable for the situation right now. And the topic we're going to talk about today is facial recognition. So here's some stats, not that important, but essentially the issue I'm trying to solve right now. So the issue right now is that there's on average some 2.5 million burglaries occurring every year, 66% of which is home break-ins. And once every 26 seconds, a house gets burgled somewhere in the United States. More than a third of all burglaries occur due to unlawful entries. And this is according to FBI. Sorry. So basically, when combined with a backdoor break-in, the front door, back door, it's over 56% of just entering a property. And a burglar is 3 times more likely to target properties that don't use a security system. So what's the problem we're trying to solve here? I'm trying to solve the issue of security on our campus, right? So I don't know if this campus security have improved this year, but last year when I was there for my senior year, the campus security was very, very easy to get past. You can go on campus during school time, off school time, enter doors willy-nilly, no problem. And that's the problem I'm trying to solve right now. So the problem, which is how can school protect students, faculty, property from malice intents? And the solution I found, or I figured out, was facial recognition door lock. So that will only allow entry of identified personnel, right? And this solution has 2 parts to it, and it's hardware and software, because you can't execute solely the software without triggering any physical objects, things like that. I'm going to start talking about the hardware first. I'll go a little bit faster because I think Michael told me I will have a limited amount of time. So the hardware is a Raspberry 4B Plus, which I'll explain later on in detail, and a camera, some wiring, soldering, and a 3D printed case. Very simple hardware stuff. Explaining the Raspberry Pi, pretty simple. Just think of Raspberry Pi as one of your little computers. Instead of running normal operating systems like Windows or Mac even, it's running Linux, which is typically faster and slightly harder to use, but typically faster than the commercial systems we have on the market currently. Yeah. And this is a hardware finished pic. Sorry, the quality is really blurry. The actual original picture was just, I cannot find it for the life of me. So I had to take a picture of it through a video I recorded. So we're now going to move on to the software parts. For software, I use Python. Python is a programming language that's like very, very incredibly easy to learn. However, it's just a bit slow. Apart from that, it's basically perfect. I like it a lot. So the software, I'm going to break it up into two parts as well, facial detection and facial recognition, because you got to detect the face first, right? Then you got to recognize it. For detection, it's very simple. I used a online library that was already available, Hard Cascade, which helps just capture your face very easy. Although I did have to add a threshold function to it, which essentially means that your face has to be in frame for a certain amount of periods, certain amount of seconds before the camera will capture your face, unless because maybe the Hard Cascade will probably think, let's say, a cup as your face or any other object in the room as someone's face, and that's just not that accurate. Moving on to the fun part, which is recognition. And I used a free online library, TensorFlow. What it is it's a machine learning network that's great for image recognition, voice recognition, text recognition, all those kind of fun stuff. And I encourage that if you guys have the time or have the interest to learn Python and to learn TensorFlow, because those I believe will definitely be very, very useful in the future for you guys, or even PyTorch, which is another machine learning library. So essentially, I'm going to explain this quickly. You guys don't need to understand it that much. Essentially, what it is, you're feeding the machine learning network data points, right? Just a bunch of data, a bunch of true, false statement, or any kind of output, and then machine learning data function, machine learning, I want to say network, essentially just find the most fittest solution, best solution through an equation that will find the common denominator of the data you're feeding it and generating the best outputs. I can't really explain it that well at such a short time, maybe Dr.Sun can, but sorry, that's just a quick rundown. If you guys are more interested, watch some YouTube video about it. They can definitely explain it better than me. So basically what it is this is my trained model. I trained it on Google Colab just because it's easier. And yeah, this is basically the trained products of the machine learning network. Oh yeah, so let's say I have Obama. Let's say I pass Obama through this machine learning network, it will return a false statement, right? Because Obama is not my face. But let's say if I pass myself through the machine learning network, it will return a true statement, because the machine learning network can identify that, oh, this is Tommy Lin, this is actually the user's face. That's why it will return true. Here we're going to see it in quickly in demonstration. So you see here that the camera opens up after a short period of time, the window is going to close, the image will get passed through the machine learning network, and the green lights lit up on the left bottom corner of this video. Essentially what the green light means is that the true statement has been reached. This was just simulating a door signal if I ever hooked that to the door. So this just shows that the machine learning network was very successful. Ooh, sorry. Hold on. Oh, yeah, cost breakdown. So this is not that essential, but basically what it is the entire project came down to about $150, which can be cheaper. I purchased the Raspberry Pi 4B at a very high price due to the semiconductor shortage, and no one was willing to sell it. But you can run down the price much, much lower. That can be applied in a commercial level. So yeah, that's essentially my presentation. Thank you guys. If you guys have any questions, please let me know, and I'll answer them to the best of my abilities. Yes. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Is there a specific reason for a Raspberry Pi could use a CM4 instead? I am not that commonly. I never used a CM4 before, but I'm going to assume yes. The platform itself doesn't necessarily have to be a Raspberry Pi 4, as long as it's just it basically, as long as it's a mini computer, as long as it can process code, I think it'll be fine. Can the AI be spoofed by a printed image? I actually tried that. It did not work. So I'm going to say no. Yes. If there's no other questions, I guess, Michael, we can just move on.
All right. If there's no further question, then let's move on. Thank you, Tommy, again. That was a very thorough and detailed presentation on facial recognition, and quite applicable too, if you think about it. It definitely can help increase future security and privacy in the individual homes of everyone around the globe. So thank you for sharing that. And next we have Jimmy, who will be sharing about his experience in and the very relationships between finances and physics.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So let me start this one. So really interesting about like what Dr.Sun talked about. So if I'm going to CalPoly, I definitely go to his lecture. It's really interesting. And let me introduce myself first. So I'm Jimmy, and I go to Washington St. Louis, which is like pretty not famous school, but it's kind of prestigious. They got like 25 Nobel Prize in their school, and overall, it's actually my first week, and I think it's a great school. You guys should apply if you're a high school student. And I'm an all-in business school, which means that I'll probably be majoring in finance and probably strategic economics, like some of the fields along the road, like and unlike Tommy, so like I feel like he's more like a computer science person. I'm more like an investment banking person. So I don't really know a lot about the techniques, but I kind of know like some of the important qualities of finance and some of the qualities about physics. And I was actually really interested about physics like in middle school already, because we have like a great teacher who teach about physics. She told us like the physics is actually a science that explains the operation of everything in the world. And I just got fascinated. So like you can explain the rules of how like objects, how everything works. So that's so interesting. And but later on, I moved to like finance because, you know, like finance makes you a lot of money. And at the same time, you not only understand like the rules of how worlds is operating, you actually want to learn like how about like geopolitics and how the society is operating and how to deal with the government, how to do your own business in terms of like macro and microeconomics. So just, I would say it's complicated in a way, but it's also connected to physics. So let's get started. So it will be like really introductory, unlike the other two, like very technical. But the graph on the left is actually from one of my paper, which is called Impact of the COVID-19 on the airline industry in the US stock market using regression model. And I can actually post a link in the chat if you guys are interested. We're just gonna do it later. So on the left graph, you see like I have a predicted TAN return, which is actually use a CAPM model, and 0.0034 is actually the risk-free return rate, and 1.42 is a beta, which is usually like on how a single stock has higher like standard deviation comparing to the Nasdaq, which is usually like the general body of the stock market. And we can see that there are lots of dots in here, which is like the actual return of the single stock TAN. It's actually an ETF of the new resource energy and Nasdaq, which we all know is about like the indexing. And we see a like straight line, which is a regression model that we make, and actually like kind of predicts the correlation between those two things. And we see like the graph on the right. Actually, I just searched it up on the internet, and it would say it's about physics and also use a linear regression model. So it also has a lot of dots. So it has two variables, and it has the straight line, which is like the linear regression line it made out of like the two variables. So like the thing I would say, like physics and finance are actually really related fields. Like they use the same researching method. And physics, actually, if you learn physics, you actually apply it to the other fields. And actually, my cousin who study about telecommunication, he has his PhD in telecommunication. He doesn't end up like going to a lab or something. He actually went to Zhang. It is actually very famous Wall Street quant trading firm, and like they have lots of money. It's a private equity. And however, he never like knew about finance before, like until his PhD years, when he's like studying for his PhD and doing research. He found out like doing finance, doing quant trading is really cool. So he just put into a little effort, but he has strong like foundation of mathematics because he has studied about like, physics and math for so long for his telecommunication PhD. So I would say if you have physics knowledge, it will be really easy if you want to try to like move on to other industry in the future. All right, so like physics and finance, they all have like same or similar research method. They all like found a phenomena interesting. Like you walk on the tree, you see like some winds blowing on the like tree leaves. You want to calculate how like the wind is acting on the leaf, there's force or something. But I know this is kind of weird, but then you do testing if it's a random or show some predictable pattern, which is usually do an experiment, which is after that you do experiments, then you collect the data points. And after that, you kind of need to analyze the results. So you will do an empirical results part, and you will construct a mathematical model to explain like how the pattern is actually working. And then you are going to make a conclusion. And it's not only like the research method, but actually you want to put it into a real paper. You do the literature review, you do like the methodology on, then you will do analyzing the results, then you do the conclusion. It's actually like the entire procedure of a paper. So if you understand how physics work and you're doing great in physics, you actually can also do great in finance. They're just changing on the variable, like how they're defined. Like some of the variables in physics, you can change it to like annual return in finance, and maybe the rate of interest. So it's really cool to connect those two. And both field research, and they all find rules. So some of them are qualified, some like about qualities of some important subjects. So like in economics, they have some principles like cost and benefit principle, which is about like when your costs increase, the benefit you have also increase, and opportunity cost principle, which is that if you want something which is now the best for you, you have to go at the second best thing for you. So which is the opportunity cost, the marginal principle, which is basically the diminishing marginal utility, which is the more you do, like actually you got more cost, and at the same time you probably get less utility. And the physics part, these formulas are pretty easy. So F1 equals negative F2 equals mc squared, it's the energy function, and like the gravity, F equals g my m2 divided by r squared. So these actually are the things that people before do based on like their researching procedure. They found the phenomenon interesting, and they do the research part and find the predictable patterns. And then they do the conclusion, figure out the mathematical model for it. All right. And next, this is actually a paper I recently read, but I don't really understand it because I'm still a freshman in college. But so the paper is called Scale and Behavior in the Dynamics of an Economic Index. So it's actually published like really early in 1995, and by really two famous, not economists, but there are two physicists. And it's published in the Nature, which is really cool thing. And in this paper, it's a basic do using like the normal distribution, which they they use a fancy term Gaussian distribution to test out like how the SP and SP 500 stock is acting, like the daily rate of change it has, and they found out like it doesn't work out. So they cannot use normal distribution to predict the movement of S&P 500, which it just doesn't make sense. And then they use I guess another distribution to test it out, and they figure out that that distribution can also like not gonna test that out entirely, and they leave this question to more people in the field of physics, which leads more people in the physics to study about finance, because at that point they found out like they can study finance just like physics. So we use like the same method, they can make the same mathematical model, and people like put their attention, maybe like move their attention from physics field more to finance. And those scientists did a great job in figuring out the mathematical model and the system of quant trading in a way. So after the publishment of this paper. And that's actually easy. And I want to say, physics is a cornerstone of modern sciences. By learning physics, you will not only be able to explain some phenomena in our life, but also master its method to explore some other fields in human society, which is, as I said, about finance, probably not only finance, like as a field like engineering, like physics, definitely essential to engineering. If you are learning physics well, I would say, master and PhD degree, you're just gonna do great in those projects. And that's the end of it. Thank you, guys.
Again, any questions, go straight to the chat and we will try our best to answer them all. Okay, if we don't have any questions at the moment, then let's move on. Thank you, Jimmy, for this very interesting presentation on the relation between finance and physics. I never would have thought of that, so thank you. And next we have James, and he'll be sharing briefly about his studies in gravity and the appliances of gravitational forces on modern society.
日记包，你帮我也上上。
没听见。
刚把你截屏了。它不是10点吗？怎么？
James, it looks like we can't hear you. Okay, so it looks like James can present for a minute. So let's move on to the next speaker, Jason Zhao.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Let's start with Jason first, and he'll be sharing briefly about his studies in rocket science.
All right, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Zhao. I'm going to grade 10 next year, and I go to Collingwood School. I'm the founder of the Collingwood Rocketry Club, and I've been working on a rocket project called ITB Rockets. So I wanted to present with all of you today about my journey in rocketry and how anyone listening to me right now could get involved with rocketry, regardless of your skill, and how fun it is to just fly rockets. So first of all, what is a model rocket? A model rocket is just a type of rocket that flies up. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Some are really big and some are really small, as it can be a really fun thing to build, or they can also be really advanced and used for stratosphere research. So this was my first rocket that I built in elementary school art class. Just kidding, this isn't actually a rocket, but it shows that I've been interested in rockets ever since I was a little kid. This is actually my first rocket. I built it in a program that our school offered in elementary school. It was one of the most popular courses our school had. However, in grade 8, we moved to our school's high school campus as there was no more rocketry program. So in return, because of that, I built a few rocket kits on my own to get some of my own rocketry experience. And in grade 8, using the experience I learned from building rockets, I created the Collingwood Rocketry Club. This was our first launch that happened back in grade 8. It was a huge success for the club, and it was a lot of fun for everyone there. And it laid the foundations for the future of my club's growth. So all of the rockets you've seen right now are made out of paper and wood. They're Estes kits, and they can be bought on estesrockets.com. They have 5 different difficulties from beginner to masters, and they can be really fun from kids to adults to build. So if it's your first time doing rocketry and you're just looking for a fun activity to do, I strongly recommend getting into one of these kits. However, once you've built a paper rocket or two, you might want to design a rocket completely from scratch. To do this, you might want to use a software like this one. This software is called OpenRocket, and inside of it, you can design a rocket and you can simulate how it flies. Around the same time that I started building my own rockets, I also got into a 3D printing and 3D modeling hobby. 3D printing gives a lot of freedom in creating precise shapes that cannot be made with wood or paper using cutting or traditional CNC methods. So I started making my rockets with my 3D printers, and now all of my rockets are mostly 3D printed. So around the beginning of last summer, I started creating my own 3D printed rockets, and there was a lot for me to learn. I had a lot of issues such as not enough stability, too much stability, over pressurization inside of the rocket, and recovery problems from not packing the parachute correctly. All this took a lot of effort to get it right. However, once I got the basics down, I was able to do so much more, and I've been trying new things every month. So at this time, I made my first 2 rockets and converted them into kit form that someone can build. As in, I gave them to my school club. As in, this was one of our launches this year, and everyone builds their own rocket, and we fly 2 times every year. So the rockets now are made out of a carbon fiber tube, and I make them, and the 3D printed parts are made out of glass fiber reinforced ABS, carbon fiber reinforced nylon, and ABS resin, which is a huge upgrade from the paper and wood I used to use. So we had 2 launches this year, and I created a turn-by-turn progression system from easy rockets to hard rockets, so the students in my club learn more and more with every rocket they build. These are the 2 rockets I made for next year. They both feature electronics inside of them. The top rocket uses an altimeter to store data about how high it goes and also how fast it's traveling. And the bottom one uses a computer called an Easy Mini to do dual deployment. Dual deployment works by having 2 parachutes in your rocket instead of 1. So the first parachute would sit in this front department of the rocket, and the second parachute, which is much larger, would be here. So how it works is that the small parachute is deployed at the apogee or at the highest point of the flight, as that prevents your rocket from diving down head first, which would not be good because usually that creates so much force and you're not able to deploy your parachute correctly. The second parachute is what actually slows your rocket down, and it's deployed fairly close to the ground. By doing this, the rocket will land much closer to where it was launched, and you don't have to walk as much. there's another plus side of this, because you don't have to worry about it drifting too far. Because one time my rocket drifted way too far onto someone's roof, and I got the cops called on me, and the issue was resolved pretty fairly, and it was a learning experience for me. However, it taught me about the importance of dual deployment and worrying about how far your rocket travels. So something else I've been working on is high power rocketry. The Canadian Association of Rocketry has a 4-level progression certification system that allows you to build higher and bigger rockets with every level. I currently have a level 2 certification, as this picture shows me showing my RSO, which is the Range Safety Officer, my rocket, because the RSO checks your rockets before your flights. And now I'm working on my level 3 rocket, which is much larger and can carry much larger payloads. So this is my first model of it, and this is what the exterior will look like. Alright, and that's all I have. And if anyone is curious of what I do and want more information, I have a lot of videos on the ITB Rockets or the Collingwood Rocketry Club YouTube channel. And I hope that you've taken something away from what I've said today. And I strongly recommend everyone to build a model rocket kit sometime. So once again, thank you for having me. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so how safe are model rockets? Model rockets are really safe if you do it correctly. There's a lot of regulations, right? There's a lot of like safety standards that you should follow if you're ever going to do model rockets that ensures that the rockets are safe. There's some regulations such as how big your fuel has to be to fly a rocket so it doesn't drift too far away. And there's also regulations on not launching into clouds if your rocket travels high enough to get into clouds, because you should always be able to see your rockets. There's a lot of regulations, and all of the regulations together makes the hobby of model rockets really safe. The reason to use OpenRocket is it's just a really simple simulator out there. There's other options such as RockSim. However, RockSim costs $100, and OpenRocket is free, and OpenRocket is also a lot more frequently updated than RockSim, so OpenRocket has just been like the standard things that everyone's been using in rocketry right now. So the Easy Mini is a flight computer that was made just for rocketry. It's made by a company called Altus Metrum, who makes just flight computers and GPS systems for rocketry. I chose the system because it's really simple and it's really reliable, and a lot of people in the rocket community uses it. It's a really proven system. I know that some people use Arduinos. I guess a CM4 could work. However, that would need a lot more work. Also, control systems is a really interesting topic, which is also really hard. That requires a lot more research to do. Yeah. And components. What components and parts are required in every rocket? A rocket has just really 4 main parts. The main parts of it would be the nose cone, which is the tip on the top of your rocket. Let me go back to a slide so I can show you this better. Would be a nose cone, which is at the top of the rocket. That makes sure that your rocket flies straight. The bottom, the tail fins stabilize the rocket, and there's a few parts inside of the rocket. Over here, there's a little container that makes sure that the engine doesn't slide out, and also you need a parachute. I would say that's the 4 main parts of a rocket. Yeah. Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you so much, Jason, again for
Yes, thank
sharing
you too.
this wonderful club you've built, and quite inspiring, and sounds really fun. Hopefully that becomes a source of inspiration for everyone listening, and try rocket science. Yeah, and Fortunately, I've heard that James has fixed his microphone issue, so we can continue with James now.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can hear
all
you
right.
now.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm so sorry about that. That was just an accident that I kind of forgot about. Yeah. All right. So let me just quickly get my screen ready. Okay, can you guys see this? All right. Okay, that's not what I want. All right, so before we begin, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is James, of course. I'm currently a sophomore in a high school in New York. I have participated in multiple research and research groups because our school has a class for research. I've done a psychology project. I also have done things related to astrophysics and astronomy. So today I'm just gonna present you a research proposal. So basically, I haven't actually done this research yet, but I feel like it's gonna be really interesting, an interesting idea. So I just want to share it to everyone. So it's called the bender of space and time, gravity. So as we all know, gravity is a major part of daily life. So it keeps us on Earth, it keeps the satellites in orbit around our planet, and it caused the apple to fall onto the head of Sir Isaac Newton hundreds of years ago. So it plays a significant role in our world, but no one really understood what gravity was or is until Albert Einstein, with his theory of general relativity and special relativity, explained it. So in fact, through Einstein's theory, we can basically conclude that gravity can bend everything, including light. So now, how can gravity bend something that has no mass? So in this research, I will attempt to prove and explain how light can actually be bent by gravity. So gravity, according to Einstein, bends the space-time around it, as you can see in the image on the slideshow. The object around the source of gravity will have their path bent, like light is one of these objects. So Newton, he was a guy that discovered gravity, but he didn't know what gravity is. He invented those formulas like F equals G m1 m2 over r squared, but he did not know what gravity essentially is. And Einstein, he explained gravity with this theory of general relativity. Okay, so just some extra background information. So gravity corresponds to changes in the properties of space and time, which in turn changes the straight possible paths that objects would naturally follow. This is written by Einstein himself in his very first paper about general relativity. Okay, the second one says the effects of the extra polarization, the massive graviton propagator is exactly canceled by the bending of the brane to their matter sources up to small corrections proportionate to the width of the resonance. This basically means that the object's mass is basically proportional to how strong the force of gravity can be acted on it. Now this last one says gravitational anomalies and which should travel at relativistic speeds, however, imply that gravity should be integrated within a unification framework that may include electricity and magnetism. So that basically says I'm sorry, electricity and magnetism can also be bent by gravity, which is quite interesting. The purpose of this research is to give evidence of Einstein's theory by finding the bending of light around large celestial objects. And my hypothesis is that gravity bends light significantly, as the image shows on the slideshow. So again, this is my methodology. It's a pretty rough diagram that I drew, but this is the only that's just my drawing skills. But so my idea is that on Earth, so basically on Earth during a particular time in a year, I can observe like a bright star, like Sirius, and its location. I'm gonna observe the star. Let's say it was just a regular reflecting telescope. And then I will track its location basically throughout the year and record its location until the point that the star is like physically blocked by the sun. But according to general relativity, we should still be able to see the star because light is actually being bent by the sun when it was coming from the star. And the star is going to appear at a different apparent location. So I'm going to observe that apparent location with let's say a solar telescope, which basically filters out like most of the lights coming from the sun so it can actually see the star. And that basically can prove Einstein's theory, like general relativity, because light is being bent by this sun, basically a source of gravity. So after that, I'll use an independent t-test. It's just an analysis, basically. I'll compare the difference between the star's locations. So basically, not only will I just like observe the star, like just to prove that Einstein's theory is true, I'll also measure how much light is being bent by the sun. So maybe I can get like something like the sun's mass or just how much space is being bent around it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Okay, any questions? Then you can type it in the chat. Okay, why did you choose to use a reflecting telescope for your experiment? Again, when I first observed the star, I will use a reflecting telescope because, I mean, you can use like any kind of telescope if you want. Like you can use a reflector telescope and use reflecting telescope. It doesn't really matter when you first observe the star, but really, it really matters like when it comes to like observing the star when it's like physically blocked by the sun. So I'll probably need like a really like advanced like high precision telescope, like a solar telescope, like the ones you probably see at observatories. Okay, so this project done with a group of other students. Yes, I will be working on this project this year with my partner, and it'll probably be done by March next year. Okay, next question. Would a different telescope alter results? Again, like I don't think it really would until the point like you want to observe the star when it's like kind of behind the sun. Other than that, I don't think it really matters. Okay, how does light bend away from an object that is heading directly towards the gravitational pull? Given no other bodies are present is in a range that can make a noticeable difference. Wait, let me just try to understand the question a bit more. Honestly though, the last question I don't really know the answer to because I only learned physics for 1 year. And yeah, I'm sorry about that, but if there's any chance, I'll definitely research about that, because and yeah, right. I think that's all the questions, right?
Okay, if there's no more question, we'll move on to the next speaker.
All right.
Thank you so much, James, for being here and
All right.
telling us about your studies.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Next, we have Roger, and he will be presenting to us about the roles that physics play in lithography machines, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully.
So, hello everybody. Let me first introduce myself. I just graduated from Hongling High School in Shenzhen, and I prefer to learn hardware rather than software because my program skills is not very well. So let us just start our today's topic. And my topic is physics in lithography machines. So the chips are now everywhere in our lives, and we use them to do a lot of wonderful things. Things like designing, typing, or blendering, or maybe playing our favorite video games. So to make the blending faster or having more frame rates on our favorite video games, what we need is better chips. And chip is not large, but they are made from millions of transistors. The more transistors are, the better a chip might be. So if we can make the transistors smaller, there are more transistors one chip can contain. So maybe you have learned that chips are made from different maybe you have learned that chips are made of different lithography machines and light have different wavelengths. So how these two things being relative to each other? The answer is lithography machines actually use light to produce chips. And I searched the steps to make one chip on the bin. And here is the number 8 and the number 9 steps are exactly where lithography machines uses light. So how does the lithography machines use light for? The answer is curving. And first, we should produce the wafer, what we call the raw material of chips. It is actually made by the silicon. And then the light is shown through a chip stencil and curve the material. After being exposed to light for several times, the wafer is washed, leaving the pattern of transistors on it. So after some other steps, a chip is made. So just like curving, if we use smaller rings, we can create more details on sculpture. So if we can use light in shorter wavelengths, we can curve a smaller transistors, then make a better chips. So for me, I think it's a great example that shows that the boundary between subjects is artificial. We use these boundaries to sort our knowledge and not to limit ourselves. So chips and lights, two things that seem so unrelated, actually have their deep connection. So why not just step out of the boundary of subjects we are interested and play freely on the seashore of knowledge? And thanks for watching. Do you have any question? Sorry. Just there. Yes, the shrinking of size of transistors too much leads to quantum tunneling. Yes, in fact, the transistors are now just a few atoms wide. So the electrons actually very easy to shrink through the transistors. So there are other artifacts or maybe technique to prevent the electrons to shrink through the transistors. There's a limit. Processes could be. Actually, the revolutionary technology is actually have been a reality. So when the transistors are about 20 nanometers wide, and technique called FinFET is applied to overcome the quantum tunneling. And actually, what limit how powerful a processor could be now is heating rather than the quantum tunneling. But we will soon face the quantum tunneling problem soon. So that could mean there's a hard.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then we'll move on. Thank you so much, Roger, again, for sharing.
Thanks. Okay.
Again, a really quite a replicable, quite an applicable solution to the modern world today. And next we have Tiger, and he'll be sharing about the connections between modern philosophy and modern physics theories. Welcome.
Let me share my screen. I might need Roger to unshare first to share my screen.
Roger, can you stop sharing? Hello? Okay, I stopped his sharing. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, Sam.
Okay, I'll start with a self-introduction. So I'm a senior student at Oaks Christian School. I go to school with Michael. We do a lot of physics fun stuff together at school. And today my presentation will take a slightly different turn than the previous ones. Mine will be less researchy and more, I guess, general knowledge-ish, because I have been having trouble with getting my presentation for my research to work. So instead, I'll be talking about the convergence of physics and philosophy. So physics and philosophy may not sound like they're all at all like too related, but there are portions of modern physics that is very weird, to say the least, and they can have philosophical implications. And today I'll be trying to answer some philosophical questions with physics principles. The first question is, what is time? So in philosophy, there are many arguments regarding this problem. For example, Aristotle said time is embodied by change and motion, and if there's no change or motion, there really isn't like time. And Augustine says that a deity made time and lives outside of the time. So it's there's a possibility that something is outside of our comprehension of time. And although physics cannot give like a definitive one-word definition for time, physical principles can help us characterize time, I believe. In physics, time is a very like real thing, and it's not just like a subjective experience of humans, as some philosophers may argue. It's somewhat like the concept of space, except space is three-dimensional and time is only one-dimensional. And although time only flows in one direction, it may flow at different rates for two different observers. And this has to do with the time dilation concept in Einstein's theory of relativity.
Maybe you've seen like space movies in which one character enters a very fast space shuttle, and upon returning, the character aged a lot less than their families and friends. And that's basically like Einstein's, his principle of time dilation. So time is a one-dimensional thing that may flow at different rates for people moving at different speeds. And as I said earlier, time is like space in some ways, and in a very extreme case, specifically having to do with black holes, time becomes more like space in the traditional sense, and space becomes more like time in the traditional sense. And the math behind this might be a little bit complicated, so I'll show some images on the next 2 slides to show how I try to understand this concept. And maybe some of you already know this, but also talk about it. One concept that I think is very important for understanding this extreme case with black holes is the concept of light cones. So just imagine a light bulb, and this light bulb emanates light towards all directions, right? But to simplify it, we will treat it as a 2-dimensional object, and it emanates light radially in a circle. So let's say we take an imaginary picture of the light bulb from above it, like the instant it's switched on, and then take another picture the next instant, and then on and on and on, like every instant we take a picture. Then we stack these imaginary pictures on top of each other, and we would get something like the image in the middle. This is a space-time diagram, and the cone that these images form is a light cone. And let's tune the ticks of the z-axis, which is basically time, such that the outermost parts of the cone makes a 45-degree angle with the time axis, just to simplify things a little bit. What is within the light cone is the possible spacetimes that the light bulb can potentially occupy after it's switched on, because we know that you cannot exceed the speed of light, and thus the light bulb cannot go outside of the ring of light that it originally emanates. So this is the concept of a light cone. And as I think James said earlier, scientists also discovered that light can be affected by gravity and that light curves towards massive objects. So let's suppose we have another light bulb and the Earth is on the right of it. The light it emanates would curve to the right a little because the mass of the Earth is on the right. And this is shown in figure 1. The light cone of the light bulb thus curves to towards the right, which is where the Earth is. And also notably, the reason why the Earth is shown as flat instead of round is that because our vertical axis isn't actually space, it's time. And the Earth on the right is always like the same cross-section of Earth within like the imaginary images that we take of the light bulb, as long as the light bulb doesn't move. And also we know from Einstein's theory of relativity that the speed of light does not change regardless of the observer of the light. Thus, for each time on the time axis, the outside of the light cone should remain equidistant from the time axis, so that if we calculate the speed of light, it would always stay constant. However, if we still define our time axis as just completely vertically upwards, we can see that our time axis isn't always equidistant from all of the outside layer of our light cone, as shown by the blue and red lines in figure 2. Thus, we have to tilt our time axis and our space planes such that our calculated speed of light can stay constant, as in figure 3. And this tilting of our space-time graph demonstrates the distortion of space-time near the mass of the Earth. Now, because mass can distort space-time, the extreme form of space-time distortion happens with the big mass of black holes. Now let's change the Earth to the black hole in our diagram, as shown in figure 4. The black hole is more massive, so the light cone is tilted more. Near the black hole at the event horizon, space-time is tilted by 45 degrees, such that the entire light cone is contained within the event horizon. And because our light bulb can never leave the light cone, it can never exit the event horizon either. Now, the time axis points towards the center of the black hole or the singularity. For those who are outside, the singularity is the point in space within the black hole. But for those within the event horizon, their time axis, it's their time axis that points towards the singularity. And it also becomes kind of like an event in the future because it's on their like the time axis. And these intriguing features regarding space-time can really help us characterize time. So first of all, time is a one-dimensionally flowing thing, but many weird things can happen to it, like it might flow at different rates for different people. But it is also a very real thing and not just our perception. It is very closely related to space and is as like solid and real as space. And I'll try to go a little bit quicker now. Another question in philosophy is, what can we know? Like some philosophers may think that we can know anything that exists, or some may say that like there are things that we can never know. Physics can answer this question to some degree in the microscopic scale, because the microscopic scale is dominated by uncertainty. For example, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle states that we cannot simultaneously know an object's position and its momentum. However, what we can know is the possibility of an object's being at one position or having one momentum. We can calculate those possibilities from what we say is the probability amplitudes of the wave functions that we can write and define for our objects. And then the last question is, what is the relationship between observation and reality? Some people may say like, you know, like simply that observation is just the lens through which we see reality. Modern physics can offer an alternative answer to that question because the microscopic scale is dominated by uncertainty. And when the quantum state of an object is not determined, it is in like a superposition of all the possible like quantum states. The superposition means that it is not really in any like specific one of these states, and it's not like in any sort of combination of these states. It is also not in none of the states, so it's kind of weird. But then we can use the wave function to determine the object's possibility of being in one state, as we talked about earlier. However, when we observe the state of the object, the wave function it collapses, and now the object would be in one actual quantum state, which we call the eigenstate, instead of being in like a superposition of these states. So observation now is not just like the lens through which we see reality. It can like help determine reality too. And yeah, that's gonna be it from me for now. Be happy to take questions. So in terms of moving backwards in time, it is theorized that there's a certain thing that moves faster, faster than the speed of light, which we currently, I think, call those theoretical particles tachyons. And maybe, you know, with them, you can like exit the light cone, which normally would confine like an object, and maybe, you know, like move backwards in time in some way like that. I don't know though. Maybe it's not possible.
Any more questions? If not, all right. Thank you, Tiger, so much for sharing your philosophical ideals and their connection with all the physics theories on the modern world. And now we'll move on to our two final speakers, Dr.Ng and David Gao. Now, unfortunately, they could not be with us in person today due to their own issues. But prior to our forum today, they did record a video of their respective presentations, and we will now watch them.
Okay, I will share the videos.
Some things that I've done in the past. So I guess my technical career began with Lensix lasers, and our goal was to determine the hardness of cataract. So the Lensix lasers is a laser cataract surgical device. So I didn't work on the actual laser to do the surgery, but I worked on the visualization model of it. So it was more of a diagnostics more so than the actual tool itself. But we essentially use visible light. This is the physics behind things. We use visible light to detect backscattering against protein shifts. So when proteins cluster on top of each other, that's what causes cataract, and that could be due to UV, diabetes, and other situations as well. Another thing that I worked on was using machine learning and integrating it within cardiovascular control. So this was developed on MATLAB Simulink. So we may all know MATLAB as a numerical methods, linear algebra, matrix algebra type of software that does calculations here and there. But there's another component to it where you can actually do some like block coding, but then with a lot of math behind it. So it's more so than just running a loop and whatnot, but you can actually do some complicated math with the blocks. And it actually provides a visualization model. So when you think about trying to introduce this to other people, it might be easier for them to see this. So we use specifically reinforcement learning to apply cardiovascular control. So instead of having some standard out there, you have an actor-critic type of evaluation process that's happening, and it would provide some suggestions when moving forward, because not all bodies or not all cardiovascular systems are the same. And right now it's actually currently being reviewed for patent. So unfortunately, I can't show you the program or anything, but here's at least this is somewhat of what you see up here is just part of the process of thinking about what we plan to do. And this was a collaboration between multiple universities. So I'm always big on collaboration, and I would encourage you to consider practicing this in some ways. I know it's easy for us to kind of be on our own, do our homework by ourselves and everything, but consider collaborations. So this was a collaboration across 4 universities. Another thing that I'm actually very passionately interested in is actually education. So this is MOOCable, or Massively Open Online Course for Innovation-Based Learning. So we all may have heard of project-based learning, we may have heard of discovery-based learning, but there's a new type of learning that my team and I are looking to break through, and it's called innovation-based learning. I know there's a lot of text here, but really the main thing I would recommend you do if you have the time is check out mookable.org, and you can see the list of our publications. A lot of reading for you to do, but ultimately just to see kind of what we plan, what we've been doing and how that's impacted just students. So the main thing here is that we've tested this for several years in a cardiovascular engineering course, and you can see in this table here the periods, at least from 2015 to 2018, when this publication came out. You can see the total number of a high impact external deliverables that were generated all within 1 semester. So you're talking about within 4 months. This is like what students were able to accomplish just in three years, which is really just 3 classes. So this is a collaboration between, again, other universities, and now that I'm at Oaks Christian School, that's the new team that's being added to this project now. Some other projects that I've done in the past, and they were presented, let's say, at posters and maybe some other places. Technical theater education. So this one is integrating engineering and theater together. So this was a venture where we were teaching automation to theater students, where when they weren't exposed or they weren't given the opportunity to do any of this just in their curriculum. So we've developed something for them. It was presented at a poster, at NCUR, National Conference for Undergraduate Research. We developed a humidity control display case for Biola, and this was actually in the midst of COVID, actually right when COVID hit, because the our Bible department, they requested from a museum a 500-year-old Spanish Bible. There's only two in the world that currently exist kind of in that time range. And if you can imagine a 500-year-old Bible or 500-year-old paper, there are specific requirements when it comes to keeping it in a climate controlled environment. So while that was being hand delivered, because you can't just ship it in a box through air, it would have always been hand delivered to Biola, and it came to our university like literally a week or two after our school closed. A team from me and a couple other students, and we had to go through really strict guidelines because this was before any guidelines were created, if you remember, back in March 2020. And just for the sake of just preserving such artifact, we were able to still come together and build a humidity or a climate controlled display case for this Bible. So thankfully it worked, and we used Arduino, some controls, and there was it would ping actually through AWS to librarians, letting them know, oh, you have to refill things or plug things in and whatnot.
Yeah, so that's basically Dr. Ng's video. Unfortunately, he's not able to provide contact information. So yeah, that's it.
And now we'll move on to David's video.
So just to begin with something.
Hey guys, my name is David, currently a senior student. I took an engineering class at Johns Hopkins last summer. It was pretty much lab-based. We had to do a lot of labs, collect data, and write our own report. And I'm here to share my favorite lab. It's called Request for Proposal. Basically, what we did is our professor, he divided the whole class into 5 different groups. Each group were assigned into a different prompt, and we have 3 people in my group. Our prompt was designing a product or method that helped a physician to determine the body surface area of its patient. Originally, what we sought was to have a 3D printer that just print a model of a person, and to dimensionize the model so that we can calculate the surface area using our geometry knowledge. However, that's not going to work because it has to be built within the physician's office. Let me share my screen. This is the PowerPoint after we finished. All right. So why do we need to calculate body surface area? If the drug dosage is too much, it's harmful and poisonous. If it's too small, and it won't work. So the body surface area is important. Here are the requirements. Since it has to be built in the physician's office, it's going to be easy to execute, and accuracy within 0.1% of true value, because we want to make sure the drug dosage is in the right range. And yeah, here are also the constraints. We named our company Superskin, and it's in Silicon Valley. We think of our solution, it should be built on the website, and we gotta write a program. The input are weight, height, and age. After reading a lot of primary articles and reports, we realized that we can use those formulas to optimize our accuracy of body surface area. For newborn infants, it's this formula. And the Monstella formula is for all young children up to 11 years old.
for adult with body mass index above 30, they have to use those 3 formulas. For all other age, Monsteller formula is the best because it has pi value less than 0.001 and the correlation coefficient of 1. Okay, here is what that article looks like. This one also. Here. Back to the PowerPoint. And when we find out which method is best for different age of patient, we sort our method and send it to our programmer, which is my teammate. He used JavaScript and write the program on GitHub. He also made a tutorial video to make sure all the patients can understand how to use this formula. This is, use this program. This is how the program looks like. It's pretty easy to use. You just need to plug in all the parameters. And it will calculate the result for you. This is just a glimpse of what the code looks like. And yeah, that's it. Pretty much, this is the cost analysis of the product, which doesn't really matter. And since it proved that our method can work, so you can be sure of super scan. That's pretty much it. Request for proposal was really the best group work that I did during this summer course. It gave me an opportunity to experience what an engineer's life feels like. Planning for solutions, communicating with teammates, and grinding together to make the solution come true. Thanks for listening.
Okay, then that's basically David's video. Unfortunately, he's also not able to provide his contact information. So yeah, if you would like to know any further information from him, you can contact me.
Okay, that brings to the end of the sections of all the presentations. And I hope before everyone leaves today, one of the main takeaways of today's presentations would be learning about all the countless appliances of physics overall and multiple aspects of the fields of science on the multiple diverse subjects of the world. And like Dr. Sun had mentioned earlier, that regardless of your passion, your interest in the future, no matter you desire to be a businessman, a software engineer, perhaps a medical doctor, or even someone interested in becoming a video game designer, you're likely to encounter at least some aspect of physics throughout your life. And I really hope this discussion today becomes a source of inspiration, especially for students both either familiar with or are new to certain fields of physics, or are still new regarding their passion. And hopefully throughout this collection of presentations, it sparks some interest in you to learn more about certain fields of physics. And hopefully it will help you in whatever path you choose to take in the future. And thank you all, everyone, for your patience in sitting through these 2 hours and listening to all the presentations. I know it takes a lot of patience and lots of interest. So, and thank you so. Lastly, I want to thank Michael, who was the organizer of the forum, also the founder of the forum, as well as our mentor, Dr. Chen, who offered crucial suggestions in the planning phases of this event. And he also was responsible for inviting a lot of our guest speakers today and our VIP speakers. So thank you all so much for making this event possible. And lastly, thank you to all the speakers again for taking your time to share with us all your contributions and all your interest and providing this opportunity for all the bright young students that we have today. And that concludes our forum today. Thank you so much, everyone, and I wish you a fantastic rest of the evening.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a good night and have a good day.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for speaking.